The United Nations General Assembly is all set to vote on the suspension of Russia from the Human Rights Council. The 193 members of the United Nations General Assembly have started assembling at New York's headquarters. The draft resolution has been initiated by the United States in response to the discovery of hundreds of civilian bodies in the Ukrainian city of Bucha. It requires 2/3 of the members to vote yes for it to be adopted, and abstentions will not be counted. Russia has already issued a warning that all the votes against it, and even abstentions, will be viewed as unfriendly gestures with consequences on bilateral ties. With the stage set for voting, all eyes are on India. Today will mark India's toughest test on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. So far, India has abstained on at least 10 resolutions critical of Russia at the UN Security Council, at the UN General Assembly, at the Human Rights Council and the International Atomic Energy Agency. But in what is seen as a toughening of its stance, India has condemned the killings of civilians in Bucha and has also called for an independent inquiry. Well, our correspondent Susan Tarani is at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and she's joining us live from the lobby of the building. Susan, thanks for joining us today. Let's start with India, and let's talk about India's neutrality. This is certainly something of a test for India, isn't it?
Absolutely, and other countries as well. As you mentioned, Nick, there is a memo that has been circulated on the part of Russia to certain countries. We don't know if India received this memo or not, but Russia basically said that any country that votes either yes or abstains will be considered a quote-unquote unfriendly country to Russia and will face consequences regarding bilateral relations between the two sides. Russia right now holds a seat at the Human Rights Council at the United Nations. It's second of 3 years, and what the steps that it's taking right now indicates that it is important for it to continue being on that seat and on that body. And while resolutions at the Human Rights Council are non-binding, what the Human Rights Council can do is vote on further human rights violations and investigations, and perhaps that is why Russia is taking these measures. But yes, abstentions or voting yes, in Russia's eyes at least, are the same thing for this meeting right now.
And Susan, the session getting underway very shortly. How do we expect all of this to proceed?
So this is a resolution put forth by the United States, and the United States and its allies, the West in general, say that they do have a 2/3 majority to remove Russia from the Human Rights Council. But countries like India and others have said that they want to see an independent investigation on the part of the United Nations, and also UN officials have also said that as well, to see what really happened in Ukraine, notably in Bucha, and those atrocities that were carried out, and those horrific images that were plastered all over the media, and what we saw with our own eyes. So, you know, Western nations, the U.S. has initiated resolution to suspend Russia over these allegations. This is set to possibly go through. The U.S. says that it's confident because, again, abstentions don't count. Only yes votes and no votes count. But we'll have to see. We'll wait and see. But, you know, what's been carried out is hard to deny, and that is what the West and the United States is saying right now, and they say that Russia has no part and no place on the UN Human Rights Council. It's important to note that no country has ever been kicked out of the United Nations Human Rights Council. It was only it was only Libya that was back in 2011, and then Russia would possibly be the second if this vote does go through.
Well, thank you very much, Susan. That was Susan Tarani joining us live from the UN headquarters in New York City.